And we use words so like interesting, inconsistent, all that jazz to talk about the Leafs. Some of these teams that I'm about to get into can rep all those words into one. And I'm talking the Colorado Avalanche, the New York Islanders, and even I threw in this team, bit of a surprise here, the Seattle Kraken. I'm going to give my take a little bit just because they're last in the Pacific. We said this Pacific Division heading in. Evan, me and you did a show on this, so I think we know most about it here. We gave the Pacific Division a pretty low rank. We thought it was going to be one of the least competitive ones because we thought the California teams were going to scuffle a little bit. They were in the sort of middle to early stages of the rebuild, so they're starting to slowly make their way. We didn't expect them to be extremely competitive, but look at how it's going now. You got the Ducks in there, the Flames, the Oilers, all sitting atop the division. The reason why I throw in the Seattle Kraken in some surprising teams, because I don't know if it's just me, maybe I'm just having a little more hype on this team than most, but I thought they'd have a little bit better than a last place. Were we considering last place heading in? Evan, I'll go with you because you're giving me the deadly eyes here.
Yeah, like look, I can't really like diss on him because I had him last year in fantasy, but I knew Philip Grubauer was overrated. And the only reason I took Philip Grubauer was because I knew he played for the Colorado Avalanche and I knew the teams that they were playing were going to be horrible. So I knew Philip Grubauer was going to be a great goalie because the team in front of him from top to bottom, and I'm saying 12 forwards, 6 defensemen, were unbelievable. Like they made life easy for him. Like Grubauer did have to play on his heels some games, but he had so much confidence in him because he knew that if he gave up a goal or something, like he has Nathan McKinnon to snipe one, Mikko Rantanen to snipe one. So I knew that going in, he would get paid high, but I knew that he wasn't going to be the same goalie. And that was the reason why I stayed away from him in fantasy this year, because I just knew it wasn't going to be the same production. Like I knew he wasn't going to be another Vezina candidate. And in terms of Seattle as a whole, I think we're getting too spoiled with Vegas. And I said this during our Pacific Division talk. A lot of GMs weren't around in 2003 when the Atlanta Thrashers and Minnesota Wild, or 2000 maybe, the year 2000, when the Minnesota Wild and the Atlanta Thrashers integrated into the NHL, and there was the last expansion draft. So they didn't really know what to do. And George McPhee, credit to him, kind of fleeced teams into making deals so that they wouldn't take players. And then the Vegas Golden Knights acquired draft capital, which allowed them to get Mark Stone, Max Pacioretty, now Jack Eichel. They were able to bring in Marc-Andre Fleury. They were able to acquire Robin Leonard. Like just teams didn't know what to do, and they really didn't know how to handle it. And I'll even say the Kings, like they gave up Braden McNabb, and they kept Derek Forbort instead. And I thought that was a horrible move. And Braden McNabb ended up being an enforcer defenseman for Vegas for a few years. And teams just gave up players that I think, looking back on it, they were like, crap, like we should have protected him instead. So it was a little bit hard for Rob Francis in Seattle to kind of fleece teams into being like, oh, like we'll take a second round pick. Like we won't take this guy instead. And they weren't able to do that.
100%. And I mean, I think we talked about it immensely in the offseason talk. I think that was the main storyline around the Seattle Kraken. Ron Francis unable to get it done, not just on his own part, but because of what happened around him. The Vegas Golden Knights sort of stole the show. And it's hard to be the second one when you're in the limelight of such a giant like the Vegas Golden Knights. So I think that might be a storyline touching upon Seattle. I just didn't think they'd be this bad, but I guess we'll have to wait and see about them. And I know you mentioned the Colorado Avalanche when you were discussing Philip Grubauer. In 12 forwards, 6D in front of him, they were all stellar. And it's nothing like that this season to open up the first month and a little bit of the regular season. Because if there's one song they're maybe playing in the Colorado dressing room, and I'm going to stay on the Olivia Rodrigo train, it's got to be Brutal, because it's been a struggle for them. And oh god, yeah, that was smooth though. That was smooth.
Yeah,
that was smooth. No, but I mean, you look at all the injuries they faced too. You got Rantanen, he was out for a little bit. Now you got McKinnon, which we learned today is going to be out. I believe it's 3 weeks. 3 weeks with I want to say lower body injury.
Yep.
Yeah, so they're just feeling with so many problems on their own end, and not to mention that they sit 6th in the Central Division with a 4-5-1 record. Jared, what do you make of the Colorado Avalanche? We talked about them before, and you gave your thoughts on them as well. we thought they were going to get a little bit out of this rut because they're a talented team. Talented teams find ways to win, but these guys just haven't moved. And I know they haven't played that much hockey since then, but I don't know. It's just still not looking promising for this team. What's up with these guys?
I mean, if we're going back to what we did with the Leafs, in one word, disappointing. I mean, of course they're missing Nathan McKinnon, who is of course obviously their best player, but they still have so many other superstars around them. I mean, 2 out of the 3 parts on considered one of the best lines in the league are still there. I mean, obviously they're missing Nathan McKinnon, but Nico Rantanen and Gabriel Landeskog should still be able to hold the fort there in Colorado. And I mean, they have Cale Makar. Bowen Byram's actually looked solid as a defenseman. I picked him up in one of my fantasy leagues. So, like, they have guys that are looking fine. It's just the team itself isn't able to string together any consistent wins. And Darcy Kemper isn't exactly being as good as we hoped he would be. I'm not going to say as good as we expected because we did know, or at least assume, that goaltending would take a little bit of a step back when they brought him in. But overall, I mean, the team's just been very disappointing. There are a lot of people's picks, including mine, to ultimately go all the way and win the Stanley Cup. And they have such a good team there. And to see it ending up like this is just incredibly disappointing.
And high ceiling, high anticipation, but no results to show for it on at least a month and a little bit into the season. There's nothing substantial for them to prove that they can go far, like we mentioned in the preseason when we were talking about this team, hyping them up, getting a bit of a scout of what they're going to look like on paper and on ice. And I don't know, they just haven't. I'm sure it's not going to be like this the entire year. This is, I think, a fair point on them. They have too much talent to not sit 6th in the Central Division for this long. I think in a month from now, they're going to be in totally different waters. And if they're not, then you're going to have to start looking at some really in-depth on your team, what piece they're clicking, what is not. And the guy who is not, Darcy Kemper, man, it's just been ugly for him in Colorado. And I know he's dealt with so many injuries in the past with Arizona Coyotes, but I didn't expect them to be this slow out of the gate. And I think that's another thing that's mixing in the pot for the Colorado Avalanche. And the reason why they're just so slow out of the gate, we thought they'd speed up. Nothing but the case. They're as slow as a turtle, and hopefully they're going to speed it up a little bit. And Adamo, I'm going to assign you with the New York Islanders sort of thing. I guess I'm going to give you guys all 3 teams to dissect. Islanders are 5-3-2, so not as bad as these other teams here. They're at least got a positive record going, but they still sit 7th in the Metro Division. Now, the Metropolitan is a competitive one. So many factors in that division, so many teams that are producing and teams that are ready to win now. I think the New York Islanders, we expect them to do very well. Such a complete team from top to bottom, and their defense is par to none. They're terrific, and they get it done night in, night out, the way they're coached, the way they're managed. Barry Trotz does a tremendous job with this group. We've seen regular season success and postseason success with the Islanders, but right now, sitting a month in, we're not seeing that much success yet. Is it something to concern still? Because last time we were talking about the Islanders, they were also sitting around the bottom of the league. Is it something to panic about, or is it just another thing where slow start, but they're going to heat it up?
Yeah, honestly, I guess I've become the let's pump the brakes here type of guy on this podcast today. But the Islanders have never been a regular season team. If you look, every time they make the conference finals or they go on a deep playoff run, they never actually are supposed to. Like in the standings, they'll finish second, they'll finish third. Okay, first wild card spot. They're more of a playoff team. So, like I'm just looking at their guys' numbers right now. Like I guess Matt Barzal can kind of step it up. 7 points in 10 games isn't the greatest, but it's not bad. I'd take a guy who gets that. There's not much to say. Ilya Sorokin's been unreal, but that could also be a product of playing with on the Islanders. I feel like they're one of those teams that can make goalies look good. Your starters also coming back. Semyon Varlamov, he played, I think, 1 game and lost. So we'll probably pump the brakes. But I can't say one thing. I did want to say one thing on the Colorado Avalanche quickly. You guys know I kind of like stats. The Colorado Avalanche are 6th in the NHL in expected goals and 6th last in the NHL in goals for. Meaning a team with this much talent, like the Colorado Avalanche, they're going to regress, meaning they're going to go back to what they're supposed to do. And the league isn't ready for it. Like I'm predicting, like they're going to have a historic run once McKinnon gets back. So
I guess with stats, I guess numbers don't lie. They just aren't getting the puck in the back of the net. And it's looking like the expected goals I'm not a big stat guy, but it's just
Yeah.
the luck is not there. I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Is that not a fair? Am I reading it wrong?
No, that is
That's how
like
it
even
reads,
the
okay.
Leafs were like underperforming their expected goals. And would you look
Mhm.
at that? They have a ridiculous shooting percentage the last 6 games.
Yeah, and I mean, not similar teams in this respect of playoff success, but similar teams in the way they're structured and a little bit of the anticipation around them. We got high anticipation for the Leafs and also the Colorado Avalanche. So, like I mentioned before, I expect them to put it together in a month's time. When McKinnon comes back, I can totally see that happening because he's just star players do star-like things, and I think he's just another example of that. He's done it throughout his career, and I think he's going to just keep up the pace. I think this is why I don't really ever like looking at the standings so early. I also still think a month is way too early to look at standings. Personally, when I'm ever looking at standings, I really start paying attention 3 months in because they don't really mean nothing to me. The Leafs, I don't care where they're sitting in the standings as long as they're playing well and they're staying afloat, because off the eye test, you kind of know where they're sitting. But I don't know, standings never meant too much for me. And I don't know if it's going to mean too much for the teams I'm about to mention, because I don't know if it's way too sustainable. I'm going to let you guys pick at it in just a bit. But the Detroit Red Wings, they're sitting second in the Atlantic, 7-5-2. Let's put some respect on their name because they haven't seen much of it in the last couple of seasons. Good to see them sort of starting to pull it together. Again, I personally don't think it's sustainable. I think you guys might jump on the boat with me. And the St. Louis Blues, 8-2-1. They sit first in the Central. We had them, I remember very, very distinctly, we had them sitting just on the outside looking in, some of us on the playoff picture, and on that borderline last spot. I don't know, Jared, did you predict them finishing number one?
No, I had Colorado number 1. I had St. Louis number 2.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking pretty solid right now. Everything's shipping up to top shape here. But I want to ask you, which teams will fade more? Would it be the Detroit Red Wings? I expect to see a big fade from them. St. Louis Blues, they've been off to a terrific start again, first in the Central with an 8-2-1 record. But I don't know. Was it too good to be true? And even so, I want to bring it back to the Pacific Division. The Ducks have been red hot. Troy Terry is looking like Wayne Gretzky out there. Like, Jesus Christ, that guy is terrific. I have him in my fantasy league with a bunch of my buddies back home, and he's paying dividends right now. You got the LA Kings.
NHL, eh?
Yeah,
the NHL in points.
He's ridiculous, man. The LA Kings, like we mentioned before, they're winners of 6 straight. And San Jose, they had a hot start, but it's starting to even out a little bit. I mentioned them when we were talking about this before. I knew that they were going to fade, and now we're starting to see it happen. Is it going to be the same message we're going to be seeing with the LA Kings and the Anaheim Ducks? Evan, what do you make of it? I know you got a pretty strong grasp on the California trio.
Yeah, well, now they want to do well when I leave. Like, what the hell? Like, what's this? I mean, look, Troy Terry has been unbelievable right now. He's definitely one of the guys that's carrying the load for the Anaheim Ducks, and I'm just so happy for him because, like, he had a little difficult path getting to the NHL. He had some stints these past couple of years where they gave him NHL time, like they gave him time up in Anaheim, and then like gave him a 5-game window, just didn't work out, sent him back down to San Diego. Like they really wanted this guy to do well. And now that he's finally doing well, I'm just so happy for him because he's definitely going to be there for a long time, along with Jamie Drysdale, Trevor Zegras, Mason McTavish is there. They got a great squad down there. In terms of the Kings, man, like I wanted them to get Jack Eichel. I thought having that center core with Kopitar and Eichel, and then you also have Deneau, like that could have been really great. And the teams that win are the teams that have shut down an elite centerman, and the Kings would have had 3 of those. And at least until Kopitar leaves in a couple of years of age, then you have your 2 right there. And it's not like cap space would have been an issue for the Kings to re-sign Eichel if he wanted to, but I understand that like he's in his prime. He wants to win a Stanley Cup. Like, I get it. Like, I don't know if it is sustainable because I've always seen these spurts with Jonathan Quick in terms of LA, obviously, where he looks like his old self, the 2014, 2012 self, and then he'll go back to being the mediocre 33, 34-year-old goaltender that has really just lost his touch. So I'm not ready to say, like, I think the Kings could possibly make the wild card. I am a fan of Calvin Peterson. I think he's been great, but I don't think they can have like that sustainable 1-2 goalie. I don't have that belief in Quick anymore.
Now, I mean, I can see it not being as sustainable for these trio teams, but do you see one of these California teams Would you go as far as 2? Like, has the beginning of the season so far in a month's time is not a little bit, but it's not too much. Like, it's a somewhat decent amount. Do you see 1 or 2 of these teams edging into the playoffs? I know it's early, and I know I don't want to spark these talks, but they look pretty good, much better than we expected.
Yeah, I would definitely take the Kings over the Ducks just for the fact that the Ducks are a much younger team, and I do like the acquisitions that LA made. Getting a guy like Alex Edler, I think, is huge for guys like Matt Roy and Sean Walker, who now is unfortunately out for the year. But I thought that would have been a huge, just veteran presence. And he's also a guy who's just not afraid to block a shot for your team. And obviously, getting Philip Deneau for such a long time now, like you can start to develop elite centermen with Tyler Madden and all that. But I think like right now, I think they need to make a trade before the deadline to acquire another defenseman. Kale Clogg has been great. But yeah, I think they're trending in the right direction. I think they have the right leadership for it. They still have the leadership from the 2012-2014 run. So I would give them the edge there.
I think I'd have to side with you there. They just got so many pieces that have done it before. And I think that's an undermined fact when you're dealing in all these cards with teams. I think the LA Kings have a lot more to bring to the table than the youngsters do in Anaheim, which will be good in a couple of years, but let's pump the brakes on them. I think Adamo might have done that one for me a little bit better, but let's pump the brakes on the Ducks and even the San Jose Sharks. I knew they were going to be a fader. I knew it was a really just hot run to start the year. There's just nothing really substantial there. And I just want to move the table along to the Red Wings and briefly touch upon the St. Louis Blues as well. Adamo, what did you make of the Red Wings? I know they're 7-5-2, second in the Atlantic. I don't know if it's sustainable. Maybe you'll back me on that as well or go against it, but the young guys are looking really good. Sider, Raymond, and we gave them some love last week when we gave the post game with the Red Wings and we dissected that team there. But again, they're still finding ways to win, something I didn't really think we'd see from the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah, I couldn't go the whole podcast with pumping the brakes. Let's freaking accelerate on the Detroit Red Wings. I love this team so much. I love their players. I think Tyler Bertuzzi is a great player, maybe not necessarily a human being, but great player. Lucas Raymond is not only looking like the Calder favorite, but he's looking like this guy could make an all-star team good. 14 points in 14 games. And not only, were you going to say something?
Can I propose one thing? I just want your clean take right here.
Say it.
Who's better, Raymond or Lafreniere?
I thought you were going to say Kaprizov and I was going to hit you. So far, Raymond. I don't even think that's a discussion. Would Evan drop? yeah, right. You know, I actually wanted to do that, to drop a prediction in the yearbook, but even Mo Sider, I thought I liked Mo Sider at the time. I think I drafted him 2019, 6th overall. And that was a ridiculously stacked draft, and you kind of see this defenseman who was supposed to go in the late 20s, go 6th. You're all like, what the hell? He's been insane too, and I don't think these are rookie I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Beginner's luck, I guess. I think these are really, really good players. I don't think they'll make the playoffs just because of how stacked the Atlantic and Metros are, but in terms of sustaining and winning, I could see them being last year's New York Rangers.
And just to touch upon one last thing for the Red Wings, I want to keep the line moving and get into the St. Louis Blues with Jared. But I honestly thought I'd see a little more what we're seeing from the Red Wings. And I was really high. You guys go look back at the tape. I was really high on the New Jersey Devils, if you guys remember. And I was expecting to see this sort of style from the Devils team. It's just not working out yet. So I'm gonna still give it some time. Let the wine mature here. But I don't know. It's
Remember,
just
the Devils are loose. They don't have their best forward.
No, exactly. Right? They've got some different. They got a situation brewing down in New Jersey, totally different from Detroit. They at least got their guys playing in Detroit, unless they're playing in Canada when they're not a full roster. But this team's looking good. The Red Wings team. I think that's all I want to say about them. Don't want to complicate it too much.
Yeah.
But I don't want to keep it simple. Let's let this Red Wings team fly. And one last thing, St. Louis Blues. Jared, you were high on them to start the year. You're pretty right now. So what do you make of them? Are they going to fade at all, or I didn't expect 8-2-1 good St. Louis Blues. I thought maybe 5-2-2. This is ridiculous. They're at 8 wins.
First of all, before I'm going to get into the Blues, I want to talk about the Red Wings a little bit. As much as I like their team, I love that the young players are clicking. It reminds me a lot of the 16, 17 Leafs. I'm actually gonna pump the tires a little bit on them, purely just because of the division. And look, see, tonight with the Leafs win, the Leafs actually jumped ahead of them. So the Leafs are now second in the Atlantic, with the Red Wings third. And the Lightning are currently sitting with 2 games in hand. They're currently 1 point back. The Bruins, with 4 games in hand, are currently 4 points back. So I mean, they're as good as they've been. They're not secured with the top dogs just yet. And as much as I'd like to see those young guys continue flying, those young guys maybe push this team on a miraculous run into the playoffs, I really just don't see it happening. And as cool as a story as it would be, I just don't see it happening this year. I think they have a bright future ahead with that team. I mean, I see Evan put in the chat yearbook quote, Red Wings winning the cup in 2026. I mean, sure, maybe in 2026 they'll be a cup contender. I don't think they're ready to be that this year. And I personally, I see them being on the outside looking in. Ultimately, there's a chance they maybe squeak in, but I just don't see it. I mean, they're not as good as they've been. They're not secure enough in a playoff spot yet. And the teams like the Lightning and Bruins have yet to really get going and start playing like the dangerous teams that we know that they can be. So I'm just not ready to say that they're solidified as a top dog in the Atlantic just yet. I like what I'm seeing from the young players, as Adamo mentioned. Maroon Sider's been unbelievable. Lucas Raymond, this guy is looking like a lock for the Calder at this point, as early as it is. So I really like the story there in Detroit, but I'm just not too sold on it just yet. Now, of course, to get into the St. Louis Blues, which was what I was asked about. Yes, I agree. I don't think they're going to be as dominant as the season goes on. I do think the Avalanche will eventually take over and end up being the kings of the Central Division. But I just like what I see with that team. I mean, there's a ton of stars on that team and a lot of young guys as well, like Jordan Kyrou, for example, who's stepping up this year. I mean, from top to bottom, I genuinely have a lot of confidence in that lineup. I'm trying to think of what to say. I'm looking at the lineup right now on Daily Faceoff, but I mean, in general, they have guys like Ryan O'Reilly, Vladimir Tarasenko, a lot of great players, and as well, Jordan Kyrou's looked really good. And just in general, they have a lot of pieces there that I'm pretty confident in. And this team is thriving because Jordan Binnington is doing well. I mean, even though he's fucking faking people out with those fake hits for whatever reason he wants to do that, being an instigator. But I don't know. I like their team, and I don't know why people were so down on them going into the season. I think they're one of the top dogs in that Central Division. And I mean, obviously I have the Colorado Avalanche winning, but I mean, I think they're just as good as a team like the Winnipeg Jets and teams such as that. I mean, you look at that lineup from top to bottom. Yes, it's not stellar. I don't see them recreating their run in 2019, where from January on, where they were absolutely untouchable and ended up winning the Stanley Cup. But I like what I see there. I think they should be, maybe if not this dominant moving forward the rest of the year. But I mean, I think they still should be competitive for the rest of the year. I think they should have no problem making the playoffs, and I think they should be a competitive team once they get there. I, again, don't see them winning the cup or anything such as that, but I like what I see on this team, and I have no reason to say that they should go down moving forward. I'm trying to think of how to word that, but I mean, I have no reason to believe that they're going to start struggling from here. I think they should just get better, and if even if the record isn't as ridiculous by the end of the year, I think they should have no problem being a second or third place team in the Central Division. I think they're a really good team, actually.
And I just think the vast majority was down on them heading into the year was just because you needed guys, like you mentioned, Jordan Binnington, such a big question mark last year. You needed a guy like him to really step up. And again, heading into the year, he was a huge question mark. He's beginning to put up some answers. And those are reasons why he stole a lot of games for the St. Louis Blues over the course of this year. And I think that's one of the major reasons why they're up, like you said. And I think that's the reason why a lot of people sort of didn't bite us well on the St. Louis Blues team. They have one thing that many teams don't have, and I think it was evident when they won the cup. They have fight, and this team really doesn't like losing. And you can see it from the way they're built, the way they're coached, the way they're managed, the way the players play on the ice, their forechecks, the whole style of game they play and bring to the table. They always put up a fight and something different that other teams don't bring to the game. And I think that's something that not many people look at. The players are stepping up, but those players have a mental something turning in the back of their head that's saying, listen, we got to get to this puck first. I know it sounds pretty basic. All teams should be doing this, but it looks like more years than not, and when they're rolling, the St. Louis Blues are hitting that one to the T. So I think that's all we got to say about St. Louis. I don't expect them to be, like you mentioned, Jared. I don't think they're going to be 8-2-1 good for the rest of the year. They're probably going to get overtaken by the star-studded lineup of the Colorado Avalanche. But let's enjoy the St. Louis Blues while they last, because they're not playing the Blues right now, and they're definitely on a hot run. See if it keeps up. And I think that's all I want to say about this team before we get into the Jack Eichel situation.